Hello, a very warm welcome to Fireside Chats. My name is Magela Pillai, and it is my pleasure to have in the studio with me today Sister Denise, who has been practicing Rajyoga Meditation for over 40 years. Sister Denise has come to share with us today her thoughts and her inspiration on the topic of perfect balance. This topic was chosen in this series so that you can look at certain aspects of your own life, including the core of your own spirituality, your relationship with God. We also ask that you look at things like philosophical and spiritual integrity of your own life. This series aims for you, the viewer, to realign yourself with God and to know what it means to have and engage with God on a more personal level, to be with Him on a moment-to-moment basis, and to bring God's power and God's wisdom into your life. To this end, I wish Sister Denise and bid you a very warm welcome to today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. The subject of perfect balance is not something that I think about often, and I find the topic, I must say, quite curious. When one thinks of perfect balance, the first thing that comes to mind is the balance, for example, between maintaining solitude and my work life. That is the thing that comes to mind. What does perfect balance mean to you, Sister Denise? And that's the first question. The second thing is, why is it necessary to have a balance?
What you mentioned about solitude and work life is a very important aspect of balance. There's several balances that we talk about in Raj Yoga. For example, knowledge and yoga. That is, knowledge refers to your intellectual processing of ideas, and then yoga refers to your state of being connected to God, connected to your inner self, so that the different components of your soul are actually operating together. And one of the problems that you find in the world is perfectionism. And perfectionism, a little bit like something we were talking about on another show, you go into an extreme of one thing, and then all the other parts are not in order, and that is a recipe for catastrophe. So perfect balance is very important in order to maintain continuity, in order to have a sustainable life. There are four things that we look at in Raj Yoga. So knowledge, yoga. A third one, we call it dharana. Dharana means it's an absorption into yourself, or an integration into your character of the implication. So effectively, it becomes a development of your virtues and your powers. And then the fourth area, we call it service. And so that is that, we have received a lot. We need to make a contribution. We need to give back. And I think looking at these four is a very good way of working out your perfect balance. I don't think most people are balanced at all, and some people are very unbalanced. But when you give importance to balance and you look at the different elements of your life, even the moments of the day, you have quiet moments, busy moments, solitary moments, moments full of social interaction. And in a 24-hour period, if you have a good variety of these things, your food, you need a balanced diet, you need variety, you need a little of this, a little of that. And so to be only fixed on one thing is not a good sign. So this is really what we're working with, perfect balance. Then everything is nicely balanced. A perfect balance is not rigid. It's very, movable, fluid. Yes, very nice. Then you are happy.
Okay. So, Sister Denise, what is a sign? What are the signs of somebody who is off balance? how can you tell? The reason I'm asking this question is because if you look at the definition of a successful adult, most people would say somebody who's reached the pinnacle of his career. Somebody will say somebody who's married with kids, living in a nice house in a nice area, driving the car of his dreams, etc. So though people pursue success, balance is not really on anyone's agenda. Success is.
Well, success is an extreme in comparison with balance, of course. But that kind of success is not very successful in terms of how do you feel holistically. You may be very good at your career, but your family life is in ruins. So you're successful only to some people, but then to others, you're not successful at all. I think when you're looking at balance, you may not be extreme, but everyone who needs to be satisfied is satisfied. You're satisfied, you're healthy, everything is moving well. But in the world today, it doesn't have very much high currency because people are very impressed by extremes. Mm. And that is a kind of illusion that's, happening in this world, and which people are unaware of. They bought into that deluded state, but eventually it collapses. So it's not sustainable.
Okay. Mr. Denise, sitting in this natural environment with fire and garden, etc., Mother Nature comes to mind, and specifically the word equilibrium. That's how one knows when things are not right, when Mother Nature is out of balance. Okay, I really like this word equilibrium. Mm-hmm. So, are you saying that that is also the aim with which, or what we should strive for in our lives? And what I find difficult about what you said, not impossible but difficult, is if you have a quality like passion and ambition, okay, which are both fiery traits, then it's also necessary to be at ease with yourself. How do you, what you're saying sounds wonderful. Okay, how do you implement it? How does somebody with a passionate personality, like me, find peace?
Well, I think a person with a passionate personality like you would need to balance that with some cool water.
Mm. Well, I have a lot of Piscean friends.
This is the thing, you look at the 5 elements of matter, the air, earth, fire, water, and the ether. They form all the natural elements, all the mountains, the countryside, the ocean. Everything is made up of these things, and they're moving all the time and shifting, and they're more or less in balance. What has disturbed the balance is human activity. And why human activity has disturbed the balance is because the humans, who are the trustees of the earth, have become unbalanced themselves. And I think the reason for it is materialism. Because materialism means I am a material object. Whereas spirituality is much more balanced. I'm a spirit working with the material body in the material world, keeping matter and spirit in balance. Then everything stays in balance. But the spiritual aspect has been lost, and this has caused a lot of imbalance in humanity, and then everything else is affected by what humanity is doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Sister Denise, if I want to bring balance into my own life, if somebody, for example, is very shy by nature and has been told at work that they need to learn to speak up because it's costing them their productivity at work, Okay, how does one walk that plank, as it were? How do you bring back balance? Say if you're, the example that I'm using is a 25-year-old lady who's very shy and who doesn't like speaking, but she has to now work in an environment where communication is very much part of her job, as it is with most vocation. How do you find aspects in your personality that you don't have?
You have to study. You have to practice. You have to learn to act. There are many possibilities, but I think another thing that's very important is you have to understand yourself and understand how you operate under different conditions, and try to find a niche for yourself where it helps you to progress, but at the same time, if you are oriented in one particular way, that doesn't become a serious handicap for you. So a very shy person going into an environment, a professional environment, which requires you not to be shy, why would you go into that? You know, you have to really understand yourself, really look at yourself, work out what kind of a being you are. And nowadays, there's so many, you know, psychological these quizzes and so on that you find your particular personality type and what kind of vocation suits you and so on and so forth. But some people may be shy because of trauma, not just naturally shy. And so they would need to work through those traumas. And that's a psychological work.
Okay. So Denise, what internal work goes into maintaining, not just realizing that you're out of balance, but in maintaining it? How do I, if I discover in myself a gap in my personality, a weakness that is where I become almost a liability to myself, how do I then go about saying, okay, this is the problem? Where do I go from here?
You have to observe yourself, and sometimes even just put a camera, and because it's so easy nowadays, and just film yourself. Because sometimes
Filming yourself,
yeah,
that sounds quite funny.
You do not realize how you come across, because you will see yourself from the inside of yourself and imagine yourself a certain way, but when you see yourself on camera, then you say, well, I never realized that I'm like that. So it's helpful because it gives you a very neutral feedback. You know, somebody can say to you, oh, you're very shy, and you will say, well, I don't see it. If you see it on camera, camera doesn't lie. You know, it's right there. Now, if you want to become someone other than what you are, why would you do that? I mean, I really think you have to be true to yourself. And there are people who are very introverted and people who are very extroverted. For a very introverted person to develop extroverted attributes, it can be learned, can be practiced, you know, doing psychodrama, doing role-playing. There's many, many different methods that a person can employ, but they have to really want to do it. Then they can. You know, in spirituality, it is said that all of us are actors. And in acting school, in some forms of drama classes, you know, people will be just put in different situations, and they have to get out of those situations. And that can be extremely therapeutic for a person who has some blockages in these areas.
How does one maintain a balance between living in the world that we live in and also engaging with God? That is also a balance, because he's, from what you shared earlier, he is not of this world.
Again, you have to schedule your time, you know.
With God.
It is said that the best time to give to your spiritual life is the early morning. Or some people really late at night because, you know, the madding crowd has gone to sleep. You're by yourself, you can, you know. And so this is something we do. Get up really early in the morning, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. You have an hour or two to just have your time with the Supreme Being. And then we give time to study. In the early morning, the intellect is fresh. And then, you know, the working day starts 8:30, 9 o'clock. You're out there doing what you have to do. And then, you know, there are even certain atmospheres in the day that are conducive to certain types of activities. And, you know, the day is designed very naturally like that, that you have your active period, the evening is your social period, the night is your resting period. The early morning time is really good for your spiritual aspect and your intellectual development. So if you can line yourself up with the way the normal earthly day is set up, then you're onto something good. You know, people who have to work night shifts very often are severely out of balance because they're doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. So if you can possibly avoid that, that's really good.
Okay, unfortunately, I think some people can't avoid it. Okay, so I asked you this earlier, but I'd like you to expand on it some more. How would you tell if you're out of balance? There's some people who, for example, believe themselves to be happy, but yet imbalanced. So by which yardstick will you measure if there is a sense of internal equilibrium in your life, in one's life?
I think that you'll feel it intuitively. Your health will be good if you're balanced, and your relationships will be good. So I think if your health goes out, that's a sign. If your relationships go out of order, that's a sign. If all of a sudden you can't manage financially, that's a sign. So there are quite a few indicators, you know, like that.
So Denise, one can't actually separate oneself from one's past and one's feelings, okay? And your feelings, to a large extent, is something that you're experiencing all the time. And for many people across the globe, many people listening to the show, there's this feeling of, what some psychologists call low-level anxiety. There's a feeling of carrying of past trauma. There's a feeling of fear because of the environment in which they're living. There are many people living in war zones. There are countless countries that are actively engaged in war as we speak. So you've got all of these internal factors that brings to bear on your awareness, on your consciousness, and then you have external factors. So it's a tightrope balancing act. Okay, how do you not fall off in that type of scenario where you facing so much internally and externally?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with your thinking, because feelings happen after you have thought something, but people don't often notice what they're thinking, but they notice more easily the feelings of anxiety. So in meditation practice, one of the things we do is to really observe, what am I thinking? And catch your thought when you think something negative. You may be in a dangerous area, but you can amplify the negative aspect of that by thinking fear-producing thoughts.
Okay,
but you can also think...
So you can make a bad situation internally worse.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can also make a bad situation internally better by how you think about it. You know, you can say, okay, I'm in a very dangerous situation, but God is with me, so I feel all right. But then you have to actually think that thought. and bring the feeling of connectedness with God into the situation. And you will also experience from doing that you receive help. But you have to take that step, you see. We can think positively or negatively. The proverbial, is your cup half full or half empty, you know. If you're optimistic in your approach and you look on the bright side of things, that's going to make a big difference to how you feel about the same situation that you look at in the negative way. It'll be a lot worse because of how you interpret it and how you think about it. So in spirituality and meditation, we practice a great deal to make sure that the thoughts are positive. We even have this thing called the power of transformation, where you receive something negative as positive.
And how do you do that?
You turn it around.
How? Give me a concrete example. Okay, let me give you an example. Somebody insults you, calls you a name.
Somebody insults you, you say, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. You don't realize who I am." Turn it around totally. But you have to be in your self-respect to do that. Otherwise, you take it. You see, we have another practice, which is don't take sorrow. If somebody calls you a name, you don't have to take it. That's your opinion. You're welcome to your opinion. I know very well what I am and who I am. But if you always are, you know, being what other people say you are, you're out of touch with yourself. So that the amount of time you spend with yourself, working with yourself, understanding what you are really in a deep way, you see, it's going to be very difficult for you to go along with other people's negative statements about you when you know very well that's not true.
So it seems that that this requires quite a bit of internal work.
Well, internal work is very valuable. It's very important. It makes a whole difference between whether you feel good or not, you see. If you don't do internal work, then you are a victim and at the mercy of what's going on the outside of you, which is not very wise.
No, it's not. Mr. Denise, you know, before one engages in such internal work, you have to feel that you're worth it. Okay? And here's the thing. If a car is involved in an accident, one of two things can happen. Either it has to be repaired or written off. I find with my interactions with people, a lot of people have written themselves off. Okay? But that is not the message of spirituality, is it?
No, not at all.
So no human being must be written off, either by themselves or someone else.
But that provided you know that you are a soul. You're an immortal soul, and maybe something has happened, or maybe a lot of things have happened, but look at those things in the context of a much wider time frame than what you normally do, and then it's smaller, you see. So you think, okay, I'm an eternal soul, and this few years I have experienced not very good. Okay, but don't take it personally, you see. Okay, it's not very good. How can I extract profit from it? You know, because there's always a silver lining in all of those clouds. You really need to learn, which is what spirituality teaches you, how to extract benefit, how to extract profit from a bad situation. You know, it's a very good art to have. Kind of, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
You know, when you say, okay, I am a victim, that's a sense of identity. But you could say, I, the self, was victimized for a particular period of time, and I was damaged by it, but, you know, I am not limited to that. I'm bigger than that. I'm broader than that. And you look at it through a different lens from what you normally used to looking at it. It becomes a different thing, and it becomes manageable from unmanageable by looking at it differently. And this is why I think having a spiritually based community is useful, because you can get feedback, you can get more of an affirmation of your value from other people who look at you also in that way.
Okay. So Denise, very interesting subject. Thank you. Maintaining a balance. It's not something that most people think of, but I'm sure that you have given a lot of people food for thought. And most of us do tend to gravitate in the direction in which our personalities naturally go, whether it's ambition or success or whatever, and we tend to ignore other aspects of our personality. So thank you for shedding the light on our own darkness. And for those of you who've been listening to the talk today at home, I hope that it gives you the impetus to shine the torch in your own life, and more specifically, to look at aspects of your personality that you don't normally think of. Ask yourself what your dark side is, ask yourself what your weaknesses are, and only you will know in your quiet and honest moments whether you lead a balanced life. And the best aspect of what Sister Denise shared is that if your life is out of balance, at the end of the day, it's only you that will pay the price for it. So it's not success that's important, successful in terms of your career, but you need to be a successful person holistically. And I really wish to thank Sister Denise for sharing this deep and invaluable message. And I hope that you are able to use this in your own life. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Sister Denise. And we hope to see you soon. Thank you and goodbye.